I'm here today with Nils of Dynazty to talk about Final Advent, out right now everywhere on AFM Records. How are you doing today?
All good, all good. How are you?
I'm good, but I'm going to put you on the spot right away. No fillers, all killers. Isn't this really the end result of every record that you guys have released?
Well, maybe it should be at least the starting point when you start writing, at least the end goal. But it's not always that you succeed. I think the difference with this one was that we actually made it as far as I'm concerned with this album, and I think that this is maybe the one album where I feel personally that we nailed every track to a T. Then again, who knows how I will look at it in hindsight in 6 months or a year, but right now at least, and when we finished up the album, it felt like a no filler, all killer kind of album.
I have to agree with you though, because this to me is the best album that you guys have released to date. Not that the other ones weren't good, but this one for some reason has all the right pieces in the right place. And that takes me to my next question, which is, what do you feel it was perhaps missing in the previous albums that this one right off the bat delivers?
I think that for quite a few years and quite a few albums, we have been kind of experimental, and in a good way. I would say that we have tried different stuff and tried to really find our musical identity through the effort of exploring music. And but with this album, I think that we have sort of solidified our own identity musically, and I think that shows, and that's why it's a very focused album this time around. And we actually had a bit of a meeting before writing it, where we set like clear goals with the album. No filler, all killer was one of them, and to make a very cohesive 10-song kind of album, and to really make each track count. And we also changed some stuff in our working method. Instead of, like, if we had an idea that was kind of good but maybe not entirely there, we just scrapped that idea this time around and just went with something new and something that we felt had complete potential. And whereas in the past we might have struggled with a track that never really went anywhere anyway, and it's just a waste of time and effort. So this time we wanted to be very meticulous and very effective, and in that way boost our creativity even further.
So why name the record Final Advent and not No Fillers, All Killers?
Well, I always kind of like a bit of ambiguity, or to be ambiguous when it comes to album titles. And No Filler, All Killer is kind of straight on the nose, isn't it? It doesn't leave room
there. There's no room.
No, there's no room for ambiguity with that kind of title. So Final Advent, or Final Advent, whatever you prefer, sort of summed up a lot of the process that we had gone through as a band over the past few years, and I thought it was a very fitting title for the album.
This is a record that you definitely find your identity with. But when you look at the growth of the band, has that identity been kind of, chipped away or created with the knowledge and the experience of all the previous 7 records? Or did the light bulb just went on when the time came to create this record?
I definitely think that, the arrival of this album is through the journey that we have made musically over the years. We have always aspired to develop our own crafts, or our own craft when it comes to songwriting and musicianship, and that is a process that has been ongoing all throughout the band's years. And it's still a process that is ongoing. We are by no means, finished developing our skills as songwriters or as singers or as musicians. That is supposed to be a continuous journey. But I think that the experience is starting to pay off, and we're starting to notice really what are the true strengths of the band in terms of production, in terms of arrangements, in terms of performances, in terms of songwriting. And we just start to realize to play to our strengths, and to be more focused on what is the identity of the band, and to really just let fun creativity lead the ways, so to say.
When it comes to a band like Dynazty, and you said that you guys changed some things when it came to the creative process on this record. So take us behind the scenes. How is the creative process for the band?
Well, what we do is that we write and demo the songs simultaneously, and we also produce them while we are writing them. So it's not like it's a process where we write songs and then we start producing them or putting them into production, but we do that all at the same time. And it usually starts with somebody having some kind of seed of an idea for a song. It can be something that comes from me, where I have a chord progression and melody nailed down, or it can be an instrumental piece that comes from one of the guitar players or both. And then we sort of put our collective efforts on the track. And what we did for this album actually was that we started bouncing all the separate ideas to one another. And so, for example, I was maybe spending a few days over at Luva, the guitar player's house, and we were writing for a couple of days. And then we sent some stuff to Mike, the other guitar player. He added some arrangements, some tweaks, and then he sent it back to us while we were sitting there, and we continued building upon it. And it was just a very, very time efficient and very effective process. Something that we have tried to perfect over the years, and I think right now it's working better than ever before.
For yourself as an individual within this collective, where do you find your inspiration when the time comes to put together a Dynazty record?
Usually I don't have to look very far for that kind of inspiration. It sort of comes by itself naturally. We try to at least take like 6 months off of writing. So you finish up an album and then you maybe don't do any songwriting whatsoever for a number of months. And then once you want to pick up the songwriting again, you are fresh and inspired. And I think usually when we start, it just flows naturally. We have this desire to continue to write for the band. We feel personally that we grow stronger and more efficient as songwriters with each album that we make. So naturally, you just want to continue that process.
With the changes that you guys introduced into this record, did that make the album, the creative process, or even the creation of the album, more challenging than previous records?
No, it made it easier. Yeah, that's one of the things that we like become more effective. So like having like two camps working all at the same time for the same song. Like I explained earlier, me and Louis might be sitting in his home studio writing, and then when we finish up on one song, we send it to Mike. He adds some arrangement stuff or some tweaks and some ideas. And while we are working on another track, he sends it back and we feedback on it. And in that sense, we just work very fast now. So all this stuff has become easier and more time efficient than it has been in the past.
This album has great guitar sound. And that's not to say that the previous records didn't have great guitar sound, but I felt like there was something different on this album from a guitar standpoint that really stood out and had a positive impact. What changed? And was it an organic change, or was a change that you guys wanted to implement?
I think that the core guitar sound is pretty much more or less the same as it was on the previous album, The Dark to Light, but we did on many tracks push the rhythm guitars higher up in the mix. And I think that also the solo guitar stuff was tweaked to pretty much perfection. And extra hours always pays off when it comes to choosing the right sounds and tweaking the sounds in the way that is necessary.
I know the album is no fillers, all killers, but when you look at this record, what song are you most excited to perform live, and which song do you don't want to put on the set list?
That's a difficult question. We have, in fact, played a lot of songs from this album already. We did a European tour in spring, in April, and by then we had already released 3 singles for the album. So we played all of those live. So they've already been tested. We added the fourth single we played during festivals in Europe this summer, Natural Born Killer. And all of them work fantastically well live. So we played Power of Will, Advent, Yours, and Natural Born Killer. I'm pretty sure that we're going to add one or two more songs from the final album. But, you know, it's always difficult because we have other songs from previous albums that you want to play as well. There are some fan favorites, crowd favorites. I think that all of the songs on final album would work well live. And some maybe even better than others. For instance, Instinct has this really bouncy kind of groovy riff that I know for a fact is just extremely well suited for a live environment. So I'm pretty sure that we will have to play that song, for example, live at some point.
You guys are going to have some serious headaches because with 8 records, you're going to have to please everybody, old fans, new fans, the fans that came along in between. So it's not going to be easy to put a set list together.
Correct.
What do you do as far as your personal routines when it comes to keeping your voice in shape and keeping your voice fresh? Do you have anything that you follow religiously in between records when you're on tour?
No, I really don't do any kind of specific warm up or something like that. I just try to be conscious and aware of the status of my body and the status of my throat and my vocal cords and everything. And usually it all ties together with how you feel physically in general. And as long as you have good singing technique and don't over stress your voice too much, then it should function. And I mean, I've pretty much sung professionally now for 15 years. So my muscles are kind of well built by now, and they usually don't fail, but you always got to stay conscious and stay away from viruses and stuff like that.
Your vocal cords are the Arnold Schwarzenegger of singers by now.
Well, I'd hope so. I'd hope so. Without the steroids, though.
Without any of that garbage. One last question for you: when you're not creating music, when you're not being creative from that point of view, when you're not on tours, when you're not in the studio, what do you do for fun?
I just try to do stuff, I guess, that most people do. I tend to my hobbies. Later tonight, when I finish all these interviews that I do today, I'm going to watch some European football, which is on TV later on, and try to catch up on some films and some TV series. And I try to actually exercise a little. I walk a lot. I should maybe start running instead of only walking, but that's the next step. Yeah, so just trying to take care of my body a little. And other than that, just try to enjoy life off the road and off duty, so to speak.
I'm kind of curious. I know that was my last question, but now I'm kind of curious. You're going to be watching Champions League. So who are you going to be watching? Who are you going to be cheering for?
I'm not going to be cheering for any specific team, actually. I'm a lot of times very much just an objective observer of football. And when it comes to tournaments like the Champions League or the World Championship or whatever, I start to develop favorites. Of course, if Sweden plays in the World Cup or whatever, I'm going to cheer for Sweden. But in this case, I'm going to watch PSG versus Juventus tonight. It's going to be interesting to see where both those teams are and how well they are performing in the Champions League this season.
I think that's the match of the day. And my favorite team is Benfica. I'm Portuguese, so
right.
It's in that same group. They're playing Maccabi Haifa today as well. So there's a lot of good football happening right now with Champions League starting off today.
Absolutely. It's fun to talk to somebody who's into football. It isn't that often when it comes to doing interviews for your music.
Yeah, it's my passion. I honestly, I do fantasy leagues. I follow everything. I read everything. Like,
all right.
I'm also going to be watching tonight. Not the same match as you, because obviously Benfica is playing, so I'm going to be watching that. But then I'll catch the highlights afterwards of what happened at the other matches.
Sure, me too. I always do that.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you. All the best to you and the guys with this album, Final Advent. out right now on AFM Records. It was an absolute pleasure and honor. Thank you for taking the time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.